Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Why We Do It, the stories behind the stories in amateur sports. And today we are going younger and we are going across the water to Boulder, Colorado. And it is Clemmie Mitchell with a set of extraordinary stories across a wide range of areas. Clemmie, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
How are things in Boulder, Colorado today?
Pretty good, pretty windy.
Pretty windy. Wow.
Yeah,
You have all the weather in Boulder, Colorado, in the summer and the winter and the mountains, and that
yeah.
links very much to what we're going to be talking about. Although you have the whole of the US, as well as some good parts of Scotland, because you're from Scotland originally, you're not.
Yes, yeah, I grew up in Glasgow and then I moved to the US when I was 18 or 19, I think.
Right, okay. And I was giving you a hard time before this because I know your dad very well. That's how I know you, through your dad. And I can't believe you've got a bit of an American accent.
Yeah, it's regrettable, but I've lost the Glasgow dialect.
That's incredible. When you're 18, 19. I
Yeah.
moved to the UK from South Africa when I was about that age. In fact, I've still got the accent. I haven't been able to switch it. Sometimes I wanted to, but other times I didn't. So yeah, it's weird how these things happen. But thank you so much for joining us. Um, there's so much to do with your story. We're going to have two big areas in your sporting life: climbing on one hand, and running and ultra marathons, and all of it's crazy. You've done some sensible stuff, but most of the stuff you've done is pretty mad. So we'll get into that. I like to ask everyone what your sponsor would be if you could pick your own sponsor. You chose Tiger Balm. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, my friend just gave me a little jar, my first ever Ultra, and it smells good. And it just, yeah, I put it all over my legs, and usually halfway through an Ultra, I'll do it again. And I think it might be more for the mind than for the body, but it's yeah,
The smell.
it's stained a lot of my clothing.
It's interesting how smell can affect the mind, isn't it? You get a
Yes,
smell, and psychologically, the impact is it can be quite significant.
yeah, totally. It reminds me of running, and it reminds me of running far for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I think by the time people have heard this episode, they'll understand why this makes sense for someone like you. So we're going to talk about climbing. It's going to include the story around this picture. This is you in the high altitudes for a long period of time. We'll talk more about that in a second. We're going to also talk a little bit about things like this and what on earth is going on here on a climb that you were doing. But we're going to start with college in America and running, and one story that really jumped out for me. So before we get into that story, we have to explain to folks. So can you tell us what you were doing at college in America? Where were you, and what were you up to there?
Yeah, I went to MIT in Cambridge, and I studied aerospace engineering,
So
which
you
is
you
now
are you are a rocket scientist.
a little. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's now
yeah.
what I do for work. And I joined a track and field team there. I didn't have vast experience running before, but I wanted to do something where we ran where I ran a bit more seriously and took something a bit seriously. And so I joined that team, and I ran cross country, which I think is this photo, but not particularly as much as I ran track and field. I ran the 1 mile and a little bit shorter as well.
Okay.
And yeah.
So you're doing rocket science work at MIT, and I'm sure most people don't need to be told MIT has to probably be the top university in the world for technology and science. And if you're going to do rocket science stuff anywhere at MIT, that's the creme de la creme. And I told you before that I was going to embarrass you with stuff I'd managed to raid from your father's Facebook page about 10 minutes before we came online. So I'm going to throw this up because I actually remember him sharing this, what must be 10 plus years ago, 12 years maybe. He was so proud dad moment. He stuck this up. Tell us what this is.
I think this was my first maths homework when I arrived across the pond. And I mean, I think he would tell you I was pretty afraid that I wouldn't be able to keep up and that it was a mistake that I was going to get to go to college there. So I kind of continued to feel that way and tried really hard throughout the whole time. So the professor graded my first homework, and I sent it to my dad, and was like, "Oh, I'm doing well."
So you've got that. Not only have you got top marks, 4 out of 4, but you've got a wow from your professor.
Yeah, I don't know how many more of those I got.
Probably a lot, I think, and you're being very humble. But I told you before, I did a course at MIT. I visited the museum there. There's a big fire hydrant because the whole kind of ethos of MIT is about drinking from a fire hydrant in terms of how much information you have to take on studying at MIT. And this is a really good example. I remember at the time being particularly amazed by this because I'd been there and got a flavor for the place myself, although I was only there for 1 week and that was enough to nearly kill me, never mind what you did. So just very quickly, what did you study in the UK before you went over there?
I was just in high school, and then I took about 1 year, 1.5 years, before deciding to go to MIT. And
Right, so
then
you went straight from school to MIT. I thought I wasn't sure if that was post grad. So okay, straight
yeah,
over there. And then the story I wanted to get to about running and sport was in your finals week. You told us about athletics, but and you were not so sure about that. We can come back to that later. You weren't sure you were enjoying it, but then you just decided in your finals week that you were going to do something for the fun of it in your finals week. You and I have not explored the story apart from the line I've got in your notes. So tell us what's going on here.
yeah. I had sort of fallen out of interest with running for a few months after my time on the team was done. Just it was overwhelming, like in terms of like not getting enough sleep, trying to work really hard, and then trying to run well. And I was just finding I was never running well, and that was kind of annoying. So I kind of took a big break, and then just over dinner one evening, my friend Lockie Ferrier, who is a pilot, and he was like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool to just put your credit card in your pocket and run to New York City?" And he was kind of joking. And then a few days later, I was like, "I think I'm going to run to New York City." Um, so I put my credit card in my pocket, thinking that we would get motels along the way. But I actually had another friend join me, and he was like, "We should just not get hotels and stay either with friends or just sort of outside." So it took us, I think, just a bit over 3 days. And we made it, I think it was 200 miles in total. And neither of us had run more than probably 20 or 30 in a day before. And every day was like more like 60. And we didn't, at that time, I didn't have any mapping softwares or anything on my phone. So we would just run on the highway. And
Oh my goodness me. So much to unpack. Um, you've actually already addressed one of the first questions was your training was track training. You hadn't done that much endurance, and now you're doing 3 days of 50 plus miles in a row. I mean, just how did
yeah,
your body and mind cope with all of that distance and fatigue from a starting point?
yeah, I mean, I think that was my first like lesson in when you get too far with not fueling and not eating, you kind of can't go back. So like after the first day of running, I hadn't really eaten while we were running, and then I went to eat a big Subway sandwich, and I couldn't eat like really any of it, and uh, and that was kind of concerning because it was like, oh, that I mean we need to be able to eat to perform tomorrow. So that was like a massive lesson. And then other than that, the body held up well, other than below the knee. Like my feet were just absolutely extremely swollen. And so the walking the next few days was kind of ridiculous.
Youth can take you so far, but when your feet start to break down, that's any age.
Yeah, but people were really friendly on the as we were running because I think they must have just assumed we were crazy. So, people were
Well, I
giving
mean,
us things and it was fun.
I think there's a lot of people listening to this thinking exactly that. I mean, the crazy tag gets attached to something like that pretty
Yeah.
easily. Um, but you were also in your finals week.
Yeah, so it was my last semester at MIT, so I only had one final, which was a for a precision machine design class, and the professor of that class is called Professor Alex Slocum, and he also has done some endurance events from what I had known. So I had emailed him to say like, hey, the final's not worth a huge percentage of the grade, and I think I've been doing well enough, so I'm thinking of just not taking the final. So I'm just going to do this run. And he was like, if you care about the learning of the material, then the final is like the final piece of the puzzle to learning the material. So you have to take the final. And he was like, but what I'll do is I'll email it to you on the morning of the final, and then 3 hours later you can just email it back to me. And
So what did you do? When did you do it?
so on the third day, so with something like somewhere on Long Island, about
Somewhere on Long Island.
yeah, like maybe 120, 130 miles of running in the legs. There was a professor at a university who asked us what we were doing, and I said, "Oh, I'm actually looking for a library of sorts to take this final." And he said, "Oh, I'm a botany professor at the greenhouse on Long Island, so you can just come and do it there." So I went and did my final in his in the sort of classroom. My friend took a shower, and that was
Your
sort of
friend's delighted. Yeah, thinking
yeah,
thank God
yeah.
for
He
that.
like gets a break,
Yeah.
and then I sent the final back to the professor. 3 hours later or whatever it was.
I wish we had the duration of this podcast just to talk about this one event. And so I'm going to keep it to one question: is how on
Yeah.
earth did you meet this guy? I mean, this sounds like this was a random encounter.
Yeah, so it was a random encounter. The professor who, like, I couldn't tell you his name now. He just was, I think we were maybe in a coffee shop and he was like, "What are you guys doing? I saw you guys running on the highway 5 miles back." And we were like, "Oh, we're running from Boston to New York, but right now we're looking for a place for me to take the final." And he was like, "I got you. Just take the final in my office."
Wow.
And
And
yeah,
how did you do on that particular test on that final exam?
I mean, I passed.
You
So
passed.
yeah, yeah.
Did you get the
So
breakdown of that bit, or did you just pass the whole course, which you already had ready in the bag?
yeah, I did not get the breakdown on that bit, but I kind of wondered if maybe might have done better than I would have if I had stayed in Boston and been stressing about it. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I lost 2 days of studying, but I did really clear the mind, and that particular class is really intuitive. It's like, yeah.
And your empathetic professor back at MIT is probably seeing that pop in and going, bloody hell, good for her, right? Extra marks. A big
I
wow.
hope so.
Another big wow again. Wow, exclamation mark.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hope he gave me some leeway.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure he did if he was into that in the first place, and you could see that you'd listened to him and taken it on. Oh my goodness! Right, let's go back to the beginning. Let's hyperspace back to Glasgow, and talk about school and sports when you were even younger than you were then and now.
Yeah, I grew up playing different sports. I was pretty athletic and I liked it. But I found running through the school's local cross country races, and then the school would compete at like the Glasgow schools cross country and the Scottish schools cross country. And after some amount of time, I think we did that starting around age 12. Um, I liked that so much that I started going to my mom, the running club that my mom went to, which was like a local jogging club called Kelvin Runners. And they would meet 4 times a week, but I wouldn't go that often, maybe once or twice.
I'm going to throw this picture up so we can get out of the way because we're not going to be talking young again in the due course. But this is you on your way to a training session at Kelvin Runners, or not really. This is
Maybe.
you. This is you
Yeah.
a little bit younger than that and starting your sporting adventure, which is very
Yeah.
relevant to some of the stuff we're going to talk about. But and I'm sure you do lots of skiing being in Colorado anyway. But yeah, another pick. I'm doing this mainly to embarrass your dad because I haven't been able to raid his Facebook page. But anyway, tell us more about running in Kelvin side and where the story goes from there.
Yeah, I always had fun with it and knew I was relatively good at it, and I kind of liked that it got you places. You got to explore. We started running sometimes in the hills, doing some like local evening trail running things. And I mean, it was just an amazing way to get out of Glasgow, but also an amazing way to explore Glasgow. So I, yeah, I wasn't particularly serious about it, although I did enjoy it and remember some, various races in the snow. And my
And
dad and I signed up for a mountain marathon that we did not finish, and
right, okay,
this kind of thing. Um,
okay, and it was cross country mainly rather than track.
Totally, yeah. It was mostly cross country. Like I think occasionally we'd run this similar like Glasgow schools cross country, sorry, track and field events, and I would run the 1500 meters or whatever the longest thing was, and do relatively well, see the same people over and over, have fun in that way.
Right. And Scottish schools, was that did you compete at Scottish schools level? It says that in your notes. I wasn't sure if you were selected for Scottish schools or whether you were in Scottish schools championships.
Yeah, I certainly raced in various Scottish schools cross country and Scottish schools track and field. And the Glasgow schools was a good one to do because you got to miss a day of school to do it. But the Scottish schools was on the weekend.
Right, okay.
So I don't remember if there was any strict qualification criteria, but I would yeah, I think I probably ran in those races almost every year that I could.
Right, okay, good. So you were into it, but not enough to give up your weekend. You quite like just skipping school for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And based on your academic performance, you probably didn't actually need to be at school 5 days a week. You probably could have done it in three. So yeah, that makes sense. Um, so let's fast forward unless there's anything else from school. Otherwise, let's take it into you're off to MIT, and we talked briefly about that, but just talk about getting into running there. Why you were doing that, and how that all went for you.
Yeah, I like climbing was sort of my main interest, and I stopped climbing a bit when I went to Boston. I would, climb classic routes that were pretty easy in the summers, but Boston doesn't have great accessibility.
You've reminded me. We've skipped. Let's go back. Climbing as a kid. There's elements of that in your notes. So talk us about the natural kind of climber in you from when you were younger.
Yeah, I would I actually started by climbing trees a lot, just local trees. Like my grandma would know if she couldn't find me, like she would find me at the top of a tree. Um, and I Because of that, my dad got the gym certification to belay, and so we started going there. But then I just started making friends there and going with them, and then started really just taking all opportunities that ever came into my periphery to go, into the mountains. And so I've climbed in some amazing places in Scotland. There's amazing climbing up in the northwest, and then ended up through friend who was a bit older than me. He had me come along to some Edinburgh University Mountaineering Club things, and I started going on like little trips with them, even though I was much younger. But
So
I
yeah,
just
when
sort
I
of laid
read
low.
this is why I asked you about what you studied before you went to MIT, because when I read this, I assumed you were at university when you were joining up with the Edinburgh University Mountain Club folks doing stuff in Scotland, but you were not at uni then.
Yeah, I was not yet there, and it was just a friend who was a few years older than me, and he was there. So he was, driving through Glasgow on one of their climbing road trips, and called me and said, "You can come if you can come tomorrow." And I, obviously was like, "Oh, that sounds awesome." But I met friends on that trip that are still, I still climb with here in the U.S., which is kind of
Right,
cool.
right. Okay. So from Glasgow and Edinburgh Mountain Club in the north of Scotland, that transferred over to there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
So
when I
now,
first, oh, sorry.
sorry, go on. You go.
I was just gonna say when I first moved to the US, I called a friend who was an American student at the Edinburgh University and said like, "Oh, I'm in your country now. We can totally go climbing all the time." And she was like, "I live in Seattle and you live in Boston, so is they're really far away from each other." Um,
Yeah.
but we ended up being able to take a trip to Joshua Tree that New Year's and do a bunch of climbing there.
Okay, we're going to get into the detail kind of post MIT for climbing and running. But so you're at MIT, there's a bit of running and there's a bit of climbing. Just let's finish that story around what you were doing on both of those at MIT, how you got into them at MIT and the running on the track and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so when I had moved to Cambridge, I wanted to do sports seriously. I kind of felt like a break from climbing would be good, and also I there just wasn't access in Boston. So it seemed to me that the best uh, way to be able to seriously do athletics and the best opportunity was to join the track and field team. But it was really quite a good track and field team, so I had to sort of go through a 2 week tryout process. And, we trained twice a day, 5 days a week, and competed on the track every weekend in at least one race. So it was extremely, intense. and a lot of people sort of who had been running throughout high school didn't really keep doing that beyond their first or second year in college, just because it was kind of they were tired of it. But I was new to it, so it was all kind of exciting to me, and I was learning things. And it wasn't really until my last year that I grew bored of it.
Because there's a lot going on. You're doing these 2 sessions a day, which you hadn't been doing before in the UK, and also learning like mad. So
Yeah,
general
yeah.
fatigue.
For sure. I mean, I was like coming from a place where I like really enjoyed to run and would run, maybe once or twice per week. And then I was coming to this place where, we were running 5 days plus per week and multiple times a day. And then also not sleeping much because, like, for me, when I came to the US, I was like, I have this opportunity and it's not going to be infinite. So I therefore like have to, you know, try to do everything, which meant that. Um, Running was often the thing that uh, became more of a chore really in the end.
Yeah, so that flows through in the notes that, and you really touched on this earlier on, that you were kind of losing the love a bit, but actually suddenly this idea to run from Boston to New York was a good idea after
Yeah.
after all that. One of the things I really that liked, and that it was really interesting in your notes again, was you said that you are still not 100% sure what kind of PBs you were getting for the track distances. So you just typically racing a mile, 1,500, sometimes 3,000 meters, but you don't have any ideas what kind of times you're running. That just wasn't the
Um,
motivator for you.
yeah, I don't really remember. The mile would have been around 5 minutes, and the 800 would have been around, I don't know, 2:15 or something. So nothing particularly fast, but uh, good enough to compete on the level that I was competing at.
Mm-hmm. The weird thing is there's plenty of us, and I'm put my hands up here, who
Mm.
can tell you the exact day and the place and the exact time that we clocked a certain kind of PB for a certain distance, but that's just not that's not what was in it for you.
No, I mean, I nowadays I'm like I love to race. Like I think it's just really a very pure sort of thing to do. It's just like you sort of stand next to someone and you see who can get to the finish line faster on the day. And I think there's something really simple about that that's and really beautiful. And then the but really I like just exploring. Like I like the opportunity to just like see new places and you know, you meet a lot of new people and that kind of thing.
So this is where climbing and running come together for you. Is that
Yeah.
that that,
Yeah.
that
I
is that
mean,
is that motivation that you just alluded to? That to tell us more about what you really love about climbing and running, and that connection that you're just talking about.
yeah, like my sort of dream situation is to be able to like move through these hard to get to places like really sort of efficiently and smoothly. So, running gives you kind of a fitness and an endurance that lets you explore big mountains and alpine places and allows you to reach the base of climbs sort of feeling pretty fresh. And then climbing allows you to sort of get to those extra like get that extra boost to get like to the top of the mountain or get to the like sort of more interesting intriguing places. So I think with both of them you can like the more you're able to do them and the better you get at them, the more you see. And that so far in my journey hasn't failed. Like, the further that you can run, the more you get to see and the harder you can climb similarly.
So
um,
you're an adventurer at heart, aren't you?
Yeah, I really like that sort of exploration, and I also really like it when you can start like right where you live. And so for that, you kind of need to jump on a bike or run a bit, just to be able to like self-power your way to something cool.
Mhm. So that and I was we'll get into this because we'll talk about climbing and some of the unbelievable things you've done. But there's a there's a there's a kind of exploratory first to go to places kind of theme to this enjoyment of the wilderness, is there not for you?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really cool like I think being out under the stars or, in the mountains in that kind of way, it like very much connects you to the land, but also to sort of your ancestors. You're like, oh, we all looked at the same thing. But I think sometimes when you're standing in a specific location or you're attached to a rock in a specific location and you're the first person to have ever been there, there's also something kind of that feels special about that.
Is that possible in Scotland now? Are there any places that people haven't been to. And we'll hear about it in America. There are places, and you've been there, but and I'm sure there are plenty more because it's just such a vast environment. But are there new places in Scotland, or is everywhere that can be climbed in Scotland been climbed now?
I think there's definitely new places. I mean, I haven't been there in a long time, but I went on a trip when I was 17 or so, and we went to an uninhabited island that was mostly only climbers or birders, people like looking at birds.
Mhm.
But almost no one. And we had to take two boats. One of them was a fisherman, and we went to two separate islands out there. And there was a lot of development that had happened already in terms of climbing, but on those sea cliffs, I imagine there was massive amounts more. And I bet those were just two islands that some young people had heard about for climbing. So I'm sure that there's more.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, you can. It's easy to understand it, and when we get into the details of places you've been to in America, how these places are just still to be explored by humans, particularly on some of those vertical sides. Before we finally get into that, one last thing, and I wasn't really expecting to bring this up, and I hope you don't mind, but we talk about adventure and wilderness and exploration. I remember there being a bit of an exchange through your dad years ago about being an astronaut. Is that something that is still in your mind? Is that something you're still exploring and still thinking about?
Yeah, I applied at the last call for European astronauts, but I didn't have a master's degree, which they needed, so I didn't really hear back. But I'll apply every time that they make a call. Yeah.
Okay. And can you fix that master's degree bit? We're off tack here, but I'm really interested in this.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. That's the plan before the next call.
All right. Okay. Well, you got loads of time. And I remember sharing a few thoughts, not that I know much about it, but yeah, we won't go into all that. But we shared some thoughts on it back at the time, and I remember thinking, oh, good for you. There's so much time for you to build up the knowledge and experience, and to have a good crack at that. So I'm glad that's still something that you're thinking about. But let's go back to the theme. Let's go back to climbing. So, and we're going to get into the crunchy bits now. So you're into big wall climbing. That's where this note starts. So I'm going to park it there. Tell us
Yeah.
about you and big wall climbing and all the things that you've done from the beginnings of that journey.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like interested in all styles of climbing, but the styles that are more like they just take yourself and they're very exploratory are more appealing to me. So around 2020, I went out to Yosemite with a friend from Boulder, um, and it was we he had lived in the valley for a long time in Yosemite Valley, and we uh, but he hadn't climbed a wall in I think well over a decade, maybe 2 decades, even though he was still um, a professional climber. And we stayed with some of his friends who had lived out there, and we ended up climbing what was my first big wall route, which was a route called the Zodiac on El Capitan. So a big wall route is just one that basically you have to sleep on the side of the rock, and so and then so that was awesome. I was completely hooked. So I ended up um, going the next season, and this time I didn't really have climbing partners, so I just climbed with people who'd never climbed walls before, which is like a funny way to do it. Like so I climbed with a friend, and we had an amazing time on another route on El Cap. That one we did much faster, and then I also took two friends, one of who had only been climbing for a year, and the other was a climber but just hadn't climbed big walls, and we climbed another route. So then we had done three routes in the valley, which soon after that, I started climbing with my current climbing partner, Keiko Tanaka, and she is sort of a absolute master on the wall, and I was aware of that from the beginning. Uh, I didn't know when we were driving out to the valley how impressed I was going to be. We'd done some, climbing locally, and she was obviously really strong, but it was like when we got on the rock, it was just like she just became this like totally like amazingly competent like person, and sort of has been, and it was always fun, and the chemistry was always great with us, just sort of working together and doing this thing. So We climbed a route called Mescalito, which is a sort of medium hard route on El Capitan. It's a really beautiful line, and we
Medium hard to you, impossibly difficult to normal people.
maybe it's different in style, certainly.
Yeah.
And I made a number of mistakes on that wall, and and like at this point, not a lot of people have climbed El Capitan, not a lot of women have climbed El Capitan, but I sort of thought, oh, I've climbed 3 walls. I kind of um, know what I'm doing in some ways, but you wouldn't say that about anything else. You wouldn't be like, well, I've done this thing 3 times. I know what I'm doing. So on that wall with Keiko, I made two pretty massive mistakes. And the first one was I almost dropped our entire haul. So like all of our water, all of everything that we were carrying up there, um, sort of to the ground. And it was just the problem solving of Keiko in order to resolve that situation was just like remarkably quick. And that was like extremely impressive. And it's not a mistake I've ever made since. And this was, many years ago now, but we'll still send each other things of people doing things incorrectly that are similar to what I did, like to joke about it. Um,
So how long are you up there? When you say this is your total haul, it makes me think. So how long are you there for? I know it's a while, so just give us a bit of an insight into that.
So we've climbed walls in anything from 2 days up El Cap to 7. And this route we had planned. It was our first time climbing together, so we had no sense of how long we'd take. So we had stuff for about 7 or 8 days, but we were only on the wall for 4 or 5, although I don't exactly remember. Um,
Only. I'm going to
yeah,
put this picture up again because I know this is. I've got the notes on where this is, but I'm just so amazed by this picture that I keep throwing it up again.
yeah,
But this just gives you the. I mean, there's an idea of some of the equipment all kind of hanging on the wall there, and
yeah,
underneath by the looks of it. So there's a lot going
yeah.
on there, isn't it?
Yeah, like you have to sort of bring everything that you will need, and there's sort of a saying in big wall climbing that's like if you don't got it, you don't need it. So it's like if you don't have it up there, there's not anything you can do to get it up there. So you have to just make it work. And so water is really the big weight because you're carrying 4 liters per day per person, and you don't know how long you're going to be there for. So you kind of
So, I mean, if you don't know if it's going to be 4 or 5 or 7 days, that's a lot of water in those different ranges.
Yeah, exactly. It's like around, if you were there for a week, it would be, you know, almost 30 kilograms of water for just you. And then you have to also haul your partner's water. So,
Oh my God. That's mind-boggling. Absolutely. Apart from all the other equipment, all the ropes and
yeah,
everything else that you're taking.
yeah.
I mean, I mean, you must know because I'm sure it's part of the planning. So how much are you carrying in terms of overall weight when you start something like that?
I think something probably on the order of 100 to 200 kilograms
Well,
would be what
altogether
you altogether. So you just do
per
like separate.
person.
Um, Well, you kind of do the haul all together, so I think you'd probably be doing 200 kilograms total.
Right. So 100
Something,
kilograms.
yeah,
Some people couldn't walk with that. Never mind climb a wall with it.
yeah. So you go up and then you just haul it up. You set up a pulley system and you'll do like a 3-to-1 haul to get everything up. And yeah, yeah, somewhere between
Okay.
like
So
a few hundred pounds, but
from the floor, you're not actually ever climbing with that weight on your back. It's being pulled up by you when you're at different
yeah,
stages. Yeah.
yeah. But it's like such a it's hard to pull up,
Yeah,
certainly.
I'm sure. Ching.
Um,
Yeah. There's nothing about this that sounds easy.
Yeah. And I
Um,
mean, that's kind of also one of the, I think like climbing and running, I love doing them together, but they don't interplay particularly well because running, you just kind of drop weight like really fast. And I like can't keep any muscle on. So then I'm 120 pounds trying to haul like a, 300-pound load, which is, for hauling, like just having body weight is really useful.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, wow, I'm still kind of slightly blown away by that. First ascent. Let's move into that.
Yeah.
Um, so talk us about how that comes about and how your journey in first ascents and you and Kiko together as two females going into that world of climbing. There's some amazing stuff in there, I think.
Yeah, so I met Keiko on a Thanksgiving first ascents trip in the desert, and that was just like, someone said, "Oh, you want to come out and we can we can put up some new routes in the Utah desert. We've heard that there's this area that's kind of unexplored." So you do a lot of pre-planning, Google Earth, doing, hikes out there and seeing the areas. And we went out and I mean, it was really fun. It was really cold. Keiko's partner at that time, Joe, he cleaned one of the pitches that I led, and he was like, "This was, you know, I." He got down and he was like, "That you made that very difficult," meaning that I placed gear in all the wrong places and all the wrong ways because I was still learning. And if you do that, you kind of make the whole climb much harder. And so since then, just trying to be learning such that like things you can make things as easy as possible instead of as hard as possible. Because in this
Is
particular,
this the point to pull this picture up here?
yeah,
If
that
we're
was
talking about minor mistakes, tell us what happened here.
yeah. So this was on the Sea of Dreams, which is a one of it's seen as a bit of a test piece on El Capitan, and we think that we were the first female team to climb it. Although it's not like really possible to say exactly, but when you get into this style of climbing, a lot of the difficulty comes with just linking long black sections of rock. And in this particular instance, there was a big, I was in one crack system and I needed to be in another. So you basically climb to the top of one, put a high point here, and have your partner lower you such that you kind of can run across the rock and swing over and make a pendulum and then grab the other crack and start going up. Um, and in this particular instance, I once I grabbed the other crack, I sort of panicked and started putting some metal equipment in the rock to try to hold me in, and then that popped off and hit me in the face, and there was just like blood pouring out of my head. And luckily, I was right above the portaledge, so Keiko lured me to the portaledge and like stitched up my eye.
So it's
Um,
just above your eye there. It's your eyebrow, is it? That caught
yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly. And I didn't really know how I was because I felt fine, but the shock was high and there was blood all over me. So I was just like unsure if I was good to go back up. But we kind of felt like we needed to finish that pitch that day, just um, for a number of reasons.
And
So
it was nearly dark, was it not?
yeah, it was like getting dark, and we were like, we just kind of want to get this done. And so Keiko, I was like, I think that's a good idea. I was like, I think we should do it, but I was like, I do think it should be you. So Keiko went up and she finished the pitch, but had a she was similarly confused with the section that I ended up like almost taking my eye at. But it was kind of one of those moments where you just had to do what was in front of you. Like, it was like, oh, this is happening. Help is not coming. So like, just, do what you can with what you have to fix your face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Okay.
yeah,
So here's a happier picture.
yeah,
This is you on a first ascent as well, is that right?
yeah. This is with my, I have a friend, Crusher Bartlett. He's also from the UK, but he lives out here and he
I
sort
was
of
going to
has.
bring Crusher in. I didn't realize I was going to link to this picture. I was going to say, tell us about Crusher Bartlett and how on earth do you get a name like Crusher Bartlett?
He said in the UK climbing scene there, when he's about 70 now. So in his generation, there was a lot of Steves. So he just became Crusher. And, he's been Crusher for so long that his wife calls him Crusher, like it's his name. Um,
What a name! If you're going to have any other name, I mean, Crusher's got to be high up there as a
yeah,
top choice for most people,
for
surely.
sure.
Yeah.
And he
So
wrote,
who is he? Tell us about him.
yeah, so he wrote the guidebook for desert climbing in Utah, or at least one of them. And he is like a amazing climber and has done amazing exploration. And after Keiko and I went on our first trip to uh, Yosemite, he and his wife invited us to their house to share some slides, which has become a really fun thing to do with them because often we'll show pictures of climbs that we've climbed now. And then he has pictures from like the 90s, and we're like comparing the styles and this kind of thing. um
Yeah,
and
you're just
so
aging some of us pretty quickly there. You are the youngest person that we've had on this podcast, and you just talked about the 90s like it was 100 years ago. But yeah, okay, that's fine. I can handle it.
okay, sorry.
That's okay.
um and he has amazing sort of knowledge of the land, and he so I started going out with him to explore this area that he'd done a lot of sort of research on and found. And there's a bunch of unclimbed desert towers out there. So we started going in there and writing them up, which is really fun because we bring really different things to the table. But it also just is like fun and it works well. So I met Crusher through Keiko, but now I have done a lot of climbing with him
And what
too.
are your future climbing plans? What's on the cards in the near or medium future?
Yeah, my hope is to be able to spend a month or two out in Yosemite in the spring, and do some slightly faster ascents, things that are, you know, get the speeds down to less than 24 hours. And also then I think a bunch of other exploration in unexplored areas would be awesome, and some bigger mountain trips. So, doing big wall climbing, but out in high alpine areas.
So let's switch to running, because I know there's a strong synergy, because you're running at basically just mountains as well, isn't it? That where you really are in love
Yeah.
with running isn't necessarily anywhere near the track. It's more like this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Most of
totally.
us would call this hardcore climbing, but for you, this is a run. So
Yeah.
tell us about how the MIT track runner and then this unlikely ultra runner to New York goes on to do all sorts of amazing long distance and ultra runs.
Yeah, I mean, I just liked to run. So running far is sort of this very like, it lets you get to places, but it sort of like uh, gives you a sense of sort of euphoria or a highness, or like lets you explore parts of your mind that I feel like I can't do when I'm sitting. Like maybe you're too tired to have a filter. Um, and that, like, so I kind of love conversations on long runs with friends or just being alone. So when I had first moved to Colorado, I had a friend who, she's a big athlete, but more mountain biking and skiing. And she had said, "Oh, I'm going to do this race off the couch. It's a 50K race." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it. That'll be awesome." It was in 1 week. And I met my friend,
Off the
my,
couch. Can you just define the off the couch piece? Because so couch to 5K means one thing, and ultra
yeah.
off the couch. What's that about?
So typically, like off the couch is we mean it to mean like I haven't prepared, like just sort
Okay.
of like gonna show up, and see what happens.
But you haven't
And
prepared like someone who's trying to do a couch to 5K, but you are pretty fit anyway. So yeah,
yeah,
okay,
like you're
yeah,
living your life and you're
yeah.
moving a lot in the mountains. So I was at the bar and I was someone said, "Oh, I'm going to Aspen to run this race," and I was like, "Oh, me too." Um, and then he actually texted me on the Friday before the race, and he was like, "This is now a very close friend of mine, Johnny," and he was like, "Hey, so when should I pick you up to go to the race?" Tonight, because it was 3 hours away and the race started at 6 a.m. And I was like, "Oh shoot, I haven't signed up yet," because we were kind of joking. And my other friend, who was the person who had the idea, was like, "I'm not doing that." That's
So hang on,
crazy.
where was this? Which race was this?
This was in Aspen, so it was like the Audi Power 4 series, and it was a 50-kilometer kind of technical race. And so Johnny and I showed up there. He ended up, coming third or second or something high up in the race. On the start line, he was like, "What food do you have?" And I just like had a bag of cashews, and he was like, "Absolutely not." So he gave me some gels, but
I
it
got
was
a
like,
t-shirt, I got a pair of shorts, I got a flip flop, and I got a Tesco's carrier bag with some peanuts. Let's go.
exactly. Yeah, I was like, I'm not really ready to go. I didn't know how my water bottle worked because I was borrowing a friend's kind of running vest thing. Um, but we had like so much fun that weekend, and I mean, I loved the race. Like, it was so cool. It's like in a race, you just get to go so much faster than you normally would because you can just like, if you mess up, like there's people around. So I kind of from there, I just got into like these long distance running things, and was hearing different people on the course talk about other races that were exciting or different like big running challenges. So, one of my favorites is I ran the rim to rim to rim on the Grand Canyon. So you start on one side of the Grand Canyon, you run to the other, and then you run back. So I've done that, I think, 3 times now.
And how far is that? Not that it
I
seems
think
to be
it's like
something
I
that's
think it's
important.
50 miles or so,
Right.
something like
Okay.
this. It's
Yeah.
of this
Is it
nature.
down and up then from one side to the other and back again?
Exactly. Yeah. So you go down, across, up. And the first year I ran that, it was 108 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade. Um, so that was kind of so a lot of these things have there been like amazingly large mishaps. But what I like about endurance events is that, you know, there is a simplicity. Like you finish it if you just keep doing it. Um, and I think that's like it's not very
So
complicated.
yeah, time's against us, although I wish it wasn't because I really want to keep going for quite a long time. But just list some of these longer runs that you've done after the Audi Power of 4 in Aspen.
Yeah,
Apart
so
from the Grand Canyon, so there's a few others, isn't there?
I've done that. I've done the Hard Rock 100 course, which is a 100-mile course, but not in
100
the race.
miles. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I've done the Chicago Basin Loop, which is like a 60-mile loop that gets you to the top of 14,000-foot peaks. Um, I've done lots and lots of 50Ks in Oregon, in Colorado, in South Dakota, and then I've raced a bit too. So I came back to Scotland to run the Glencoe Skyline Traverse
So
when
that's
on
this
the old
picture, isn't
course.
it? Is that this
So
picture?
that was that picture, which
Yeah.
I had come actually from I had run a 100-kilometer race a month or so before, and I was having a bit of pain in my knee. And normally I would just have been like, oh, I don't know if I should do the race, like with this knee thing. But my dad was out there, and Susan, and Sasha, my now wife, and my dad kept saying to the dogs, like, "You're so excited to be here." um, and so then, because the dogs were on their holidays, I felt like I had to run the race. So it was actually, I'm glad I did because it was gorgeous and really fun. But it wasn't like the most well advised start line
But you get to the
conditions.
finish, and Sasha took this picture.
Yeah, and then Sasha took that picture just as I was sort of finishing during the sunset, and things were starting to feel a lot better. In the last 6 miles of that race, so that was kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and then I signed up to run the West Highland Way
Yeah, I'm
100.
coming to that, so that's good.
Uh,
Just keep going with that. Yep.
yeah, and that was like sort of felt like a sort of a homecoming in a certain way, because I had hiked the West Highland Way 100-mile course with two friends when we were 13 or so. So it was sort of my first big solo kids only adventure, and it took us like 5 days, and it felt like amazingly difficult, and but also like we just all had an amazing time. Like there were so many jokes, and like it was just really fun. And it was so fun that when we got the train back to Glasgow, my dad was like, "I'll pick you up from the train station," and we were like, "No, no, no, we're just gonna walk home." um, so I kind of felt like this, but during that walk, I had heard that people run it in one day, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing!" But I was 13 years old and not really a runner. Um, and so when I came back to this race, it felt like this really sort of
Something you had to do from childhood. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
Childhood
it felt like
aspiration. Yeah.
exactly. It felt like this big dream, and like I felt like I was gonna run really well, and I just never felt good like the whole time, and I started to panic. Like um, the race starts at 1 a.m. I hadn't really factored that into my training at all. I was kind of stressed about other things in life, and I ended up not making it to the halfway point of the race, and that was just so hard. Like
Mhm.
it was kind of like at mile 40, it seemed impossible that I would run 60 more miles. But I the pain of not finishing the race and not doing my best was sort of so much larger than whatever pain I could have been in by just keeping to put one foot in front of the other. So since then I haven't like I've run 3 long races since then, and at no point did I have any doubt that I was going to finish them. Like,
No matter how hard it is, it's much better to finish than to stop
yeah,
somewhere. Yeah,
for sure. Like yeah, and I had a race in Arizona where I think I was almost last. Like but it was just like it was a 100-kilometer race, so 60-ish miles, and after mile 20, was having some problems with my hip, and I was like, well,
don't care.
don't
Gonna
care.
finish.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I'm like, I just got to work out how to keep moving, and so I think that has been a wonderful lesson, and just like that being like to be tough is kind of simple. It's kind of
to
easy.
be tough.
Yeah.
Wow. There's a whole different league of being tough, and you're in the middle of that chapter. There's a chapter
Yeah.
about you about when in the book of being tough. There's a paragraph called Clemmie Mitchell. Wow. So let's just bring it all to a bit of a head now. With just the life you lead is pretty full on with work. I mean, you do a really, really high level technical, intense job in aerospace. And do you find that this adventuring, this wilderness, is there a relief from that, or a release? Is it part of how you process how your brain and body work on your kind of work and kind of pleasure times?
Yeah, I mean, I think like yeah, to be outside and exploring is like where I am it's where everything feels really easy and really sort of it's very meditative. But I found myself, I had a very close friend die in the start of 2024, and I was just running all the time. Like, it was just like when I would run, she would visit me. Like, so we would just be together for a moment. And so like I feel like there's a silence that you get by being far from the chaos of uh, you know, work or all of this type of thing that, kind of is afforded to you by just being, outside and being far outside and just sort of moving with the mountains. Um, and I think I'm probably a better engineer because of it. I think I do better at work because this is how I spend my weekends. Although I think most people, Friday is the day they get to work late, but for me, Monday I get to work late because, the weekend I've been waking up much earlier and, doing so much.
Absolutely. Wow. I've heard a lot of really interesting things in the episodes we've done on this podcast, but that's going to be up there with one of the most beautiful answers I think I've heard. So that's very moving and touching, and I think for me and I've run a few endurance races, and for others in that world, I think everyone would understand and empathize with that. So that's probably touching nerves on other people as well as it did with me there. So
Yeah.
that was deep and beautiful to hear. So thank you for sharing that. So last question: you're so young, you've done so much. What are you going to do more? I mean, what are your? You'll have many of these, but pick one big ambition for the future that we can keep an eye on as I follow you through your dad, and I'm sure we hear more about you probably in due course.
Yeah, I mean, next year I would like to run a 100-mile race well, like, feel like because I've learned a
Did you
lot.
say next year?
Yeah.
Okay,
But
right, okay.
but in the long term, I'd like to do big mountaineering expeditions, like exploratory expeditions. Yeah, maybe in the Canadian
Whereabouts?
Rockies.
Which mountain?
Uh, like
Which is the equivalent of the Highland Way when you were 13? What's that in the mountains for you now?
I think probably the Canadian Rockies would be something that would be really appealing to me.
And
But
is
I'd
that with
also
that? Would you do that with the current people you with? Are these parts
Mhm.
of plans with Kiko, or
Yeah,
perhaps?
for sure. Like yeah, they would be dream partners for that for sure.
Okay. Wow, Clemmie, time's up, and I wish it wasn't. Thank you so much for coming on. It's your dad's fault. Let's blame him. He suggested that I reach out to you. I'm so glad that he was helped me with that. I'm so glad you were happy to come on and do this. I knew it would be fascinating, but I didn't know the details at that point, and I've been proved absolutely more right than I thought. It's incredible, and you are amazing. Can I just say that you are absolutely amazing? And I'm so glad that you've come on to have a chat, and good luck with everything that you're going to be doing from here on. And wow, what a future you've got ahead of you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was so nice chatting and being
Total
able to
pleasure.
think about these things a bit.
Yeah, well, that's good too. I'm glad that you said that. That's also part of it. So thank you. Have a good Christmas and enjoy. Is it snowing yet there?
It has once, but it's dry now.
Okay, so will you be doing some skiing over the next wee while?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, have a great time. All the best, and thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.